But the offer for Australians and others to get out of China at the moment is not an opportunity that ought to be easily dismissed. To discuss this further, I'm joined now by former Immigration Minister Amanda Vanstone, who joins me from Adelaide. Thanks for joining us, Amanda. You must be very concerned looking at what's happening with the coronavirus. And with your knowledge of China and issues like this, do we need to take what we're getting from official channels at face value, or could the situation be a lot worse there for people, particularly in Wuhan?
Well, I think the situation could be worse than we know, and that's not by any bad faith on behalf of the senior Chinese in government, but, you know, there's a hell of a lot of people there, and not everybody, as we know already, at the lower level is prepared to tell the next level up that they've got a problem. So managing China from the top would be a hell of a job, and I'm certainly not convinced that we know the whole story yet.
Yeah, a lot of this, the instances on social media, which I stress again, we've made some attempts to verify some of this, and some of it is very factual, but there's a lot of other material out there. But there are people, you know, railing against local authorities, or saying that the numbers of dead are not being verified, saying that they've got so many bodies that they can't cremate all of them, and vision of people being forced out of their homes because they're sick and being forced into hospitals of some kind. So this is what you may get with an authoritarian state trying to deal with something like this.
Well, yes, it's not just that it's an authoritarian state, it's the size of the population. I mean, you can talk about things per capita, but when you multiply that by the number of people, there are very serious risks. And for a country like China to shut down a city the size of Wuhan, it's incredible. It's an incredible response. And it does make someone like me say, well, did they need to go that far? And if they did, what do they know that we don't?
Yeah, I agree. It's an exceptional dilemma, and Australia's response to that and the response of other countries bears that out. The fact that we would be putting on a plane to evacuate people, that doesn't ordinarily happen. I can only think of that happening one time before in the case of a civil war about a decade ago in Lebanon. Tell us about this operation and the Christmas Island facilities. You'd know them well. Sure, you're not in a five-star hotel, but is that facility there adequate, and do you think it's a sensible use of that facility?
Yes, I do, because, look, you've got to plan this sort of stuff in a hurry. You know, you don't have a month to think about it. And first of all, there would have been extensive negotiations with the Chinese government to get the people who wanted to board the plane from where they were in Wuhan to the plane. That would have taken an enormous effort on behalf of our consular officials and people in foreign affairs and trade, and you know, full marks to them for having been able to achieve that, to get people out of a city in lockdown and onto a plane. The next problem is when the plane lands, how to make sure that the people are not able to inadvertently spread the virus should they have it. So the easiest way to do that is land the plane somewhere that's very near a facility, and hello, we have Christmas Island. Now, I did read and I heard you mentioning someone worrying about a cockroach. Well, you know, I think some of the best restaurants in Sydney and Melbourne will have a cockroach in them. I really don't see that as a serious problem. Look, they'll be safe. They're out of Wuhan, number one. They're in Australia. They've got access to good medical care and not going to run the risk of infecting people on the mainland. It sounds a pretty good deal to me.
Yeah, I can understand that they're impatient. It's a frightening situation and they want to get home, but for the quarantine reasons, Christmas Island does seem ideal. Tell me about your concerns for those other Australian citizens who at this moment are electing to stay in Wuhan and other parts of China. You can understand their concerns about the flight home. You can understand their concerns about leaving family, but gee, the lure of Australia and our medical system must be pretty strong.
Look, I understand getting on a plane, you're worried that someone else on the plane has got it, and that they'll sneeze as they go down the passageway to the loo or something, and the moisture drop will land on you and you'll get it. But guess what? You'll be landing in Australia, where the hospitals have got access for you. You've got a healthcare opportunity guaranteed to you, which you haven't got in Wuhan. So I'm at a loss to understand the people who don't want to come. I mean, well, I understand the people who don't want to come because they're with family. I saw a young man interviewed the other day. He's leaving his grandparents behind. They may be worried about the trip coming, and they may be concerned about what Christmas Island is like. But the point is, They're now at the epicentre of what might become a pandemic, and their government has offered to get them out of it, to get them home in a place where they'll have access to medical care should they have the virus, and they'll be safe. It's hard to say goodbye to relatives, I understand that, and probably some of them want to bring their relatives with them because they're worried their relatives staying there will get the virus, and especially if they're more elderly people with a flu type thing, it's, you know, risky. The people who've died have largely been older people. I understand that, but that's not the world as it is. These people are our citizens and we can bring them home, and I agree with Scott Morrison. They need to think very carefully about rejecting any opportunities to go, and if they can get on further Qantas flights out of Shanghai or wherever, they should get on them.
Just on another issue, if I could get your thoughts on it finally, Amanda Vanstone. You left Parliament before the climate wars really broke out within the coalition, but gee, they've torn the coalition apart from time to time over the past decade. There are rumblings of them coming out again from the party room yesterday. Is it possible or impossible for the coalition actually to come to some sort of a consensus on climate policy in the medium term?
Oh, look, I think it is possible. I mean, I heard the fellow you had on before, Labor's working on their policies. That's a recent admission. I thought they had everything sort of sorted out, and if they were in government, everything would be fine. And as you rightly question, what we do here, it's not that it doesn't make a difference, but because every contribution makes a difference. But to imagine that we go whole hog and do everything we possibly can at the cost of jobs, that somehow our climate will be better, is crazy. I mean, it's a worldwide problem and has to be addressed in a worldwide way. And I know that the fanatics like to talk about our per capita emissions being higher, and they are, not higher than the United States, but higher than, for example, China. But that's what per capita means, per person. If you multiply it by the number of people, we are a low emitter on that basis because we've got a lower population. We've got countries that are building coal-fired power stations, and until we can come to grips with that sort of thing, it does make you wonder how you can go to a guy who's currently got a job and say, you're going to lose your job because we'd like to show ourselves to be more committed to this than we apparently appear now. I think that's a bit rough myself.
Cutting to the chase as usual. Great to catch up with you again, Amanda Vanstone. I appreciate it.
Pleasure.